Warning, this podcast contains explicit sexual language and should only be listened to at work if you're looking for an excuse to connect with your HR representative. Additionally, all mentions of the word women include cis and trans women. For my friends who are genderqueer, gender fluid, figuring it out, anything in between, and feel like this conversation is also important for you, you are welcome here.
Will you open up with me? These pages, they can feed your innermost desires. Do you feel inspired? Are you getting what you need? Are you coming curiously? A secret safe with me. And here you can simply be yourself. Jace reads romance. Come on in, come on in, come on.
Hi, y'all. This is Jace, she, they, and you found Jace Reads Romance, a community dedicated to empowering women about sex and sexuality through the reading of romance novels. It's book club day, which I'm excited about, and y'all are in for a really wild ride. Like our book club days, I have an incredible guest. You have met her before. It is Hailey, who we met back in September, who I'm not going to say convinced me because it was definitely on my TBR, but inspired me to complete the new Camelot trilogy. Trilogy in the main books, but there's a couple other things by Simone, which we'll get into. We'll get into all the feels I have. But this was a reread for Hailey. So Hailey, how was this to reread?
Okay, first off, I want to know the rules of podcast book club because the spoilers in this book be spoiling. And I just need to say, first off, when you know the ending, the whole book is read in a different context, like entirely. So all of the little foreshadowing, the little clues about the Arthurian legend are way more obvious the second time you read it. And it is crafted. Like this wasn't, fan fiction that she happened to publish. She crafted a modern Arthurian legend in a really cool way and really considered the literature of it. Like, I'm like, Sierra, you're amazing. And I think to me, this book, rereading it, it just reminded me, it's like some of these writers are writing such good fiction that if you take all the spice out of it, all of it, the story is still really freaking compelling, and the writing and character development and plot design are 10 out of 10. Like no notes on that stuff. So I loved rereading it. It was such a good experience. I'm not typically a rereader.
You can tell how she got me to push this up the TBR. This passion and excitement. But you're not normally a rereader? Because I am. No. I absolutely love to.
I am not, and it's because there's just so many books in the world and so little time, and I feel like I'm doing a disservice to books I haven't read yet.
I understand that. I definitely feel that. So for those of you who are new to book club, the rules of book club, first rule of book club is everything will be spoiled. Everything will be spoiled in this episode. Now, if that means that you need to pause, go spend the next few weeks of your life reading this, and then come back to us, we respect you for it. I absolutely do. If you still want to give this a listen, just put the mute on, wash dishes, listen to something else on your iPad so that we can still get a listen to this episode, and then come back in a few weeks and listen to it again. But the first rule of book club is everything will be spoiled. The second rule of book club is we will talk about the explicit spice. And I suppose the third rule of book club is we will swear so fucking much. Or I will. Especially in this episode. Because I don't think you understand how much I hate to cry. How much I hate to cry.
Sorry.
And I'm I finished American King yesterday. I'm weeping. I am weeping uncontrollably. Tissues, shirt sleeves, like people around me are concerned for my well-being. And then the next thing happens and I cry even harder. Like, I cry even harder. Oh,
Well, I think what's important to remember when reading this book is that the Arthurian legend is tragic. Like, it is a tragic
oh,
tale of damsels in
yes.
distress and loyalty and leadership and justice and war and all of that stuff. And she did it with this. And so, of course, you're going to cry. And like, I
Oh
was
my
trying to think,
gosh.
I'm like, what would I
I'm
call the
holding these
trope?
books to me. Like I'm holding these books to me because like I need
Yeah.
y'all to know that if I look down, it's because of these books. But also they are now like precious and hateful. Like,
Well, yeah. And I was trying to figure out, I was like, okay, what would I say is the key trope in this book? Like, if I was going to say it to somebody else, it's all of them. It's second chance
yeah.
romance. It's friends to
Mm-hmm.
lovers. It's enemies to lovers. It's like, Dom sub.
There's
It's powerful. It's workplace. Like,
it's
it's just
taboo,
everything.
it's forbidden, it's I I think one of the things that I have noticed about Sierra Simone is she makes me feel too many things for her characters. Like I'm just in their agony so hard and it's just devastating. Like, the opening, okay, let's clarify the three books we're really talking about because
Okay, cool.
there are some side books, but we've got in the main trilogy American Queen, American Prince, and American King. And they are not interconnected. They are like a series. You got to read one before the other. It will not make sense. It will not give you that same experience. And it's that order: Queen, Prince, King. Um, there are some side stories and kind of bridge tales, but we're not going to get into that. Cool. Are we good with just these three?
Yes, I've actually never read the Nemu and Merlin book, if I'm being totally
Yeah.
honest. I will eventually, but it's one of those things where it's like, I love the trilogy so much, I don't want to taint it with other like
Yeah.
novella side stories. I know that sounds
God.
silly, but like,
No, it doesn't.
uh,
And um for those of you wondering, this will be a part one. Like there's no way that we can talk about these three books in one episode. So I'm
oh, hell no.
warning you now, we will be pausing, stopping, talking, and it will continue next week. But okay, I would love to start with just how did you find these books? Because I know you have an interesting Sierra Simone, discovery tale, and then what, like how do you view this series, this trilogy in your life? Because there's a reason why you shared it with me, and I
Oof.
want people to feel that, and then I'm going to share my introduction story to this trilogy too.
Okay, so first things first, like I said in my last episode with you, and I'll repeat some stuff just in case people didn't hear that one, is I fell into romance kind of at a really dark place. In COVID, I was on bed rest from a difficult pregnancy. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I just wanted to read fun things. And I have this one girlfriend who really she should be doing book reviewing for a profession, but she doesn't. And she does the best Goodreads reviews. And so if she gives something 4 stars or above, it's like it's a quality read. She reads every genre. She takes apart the reading. Like she reads, she consumes them, right? So I had read Olivia Dade's book, spoiler alert, by accident.
Mm-hmm.
I picked it for book club. We were doing virtual book clubs at that time. We had never read anything spicy. And I was like, oh my God, girls, I'm so embarrassed. And they were like, don't be, it was so fun. But that first thing where you let your freak flag fly with your group of friends the first time it's a little vulnerable. Um, And so then I was like, I want more of that. I want a plus size heroine. I want fun romance. I don't want to, I want to feel things, but I want those things to be low stakes. And so I ended up,
I'm so sorry.
I know, right? Right. So I ended up looking at my friend Robin's Goodreads, and I saw that the book Misadventures of a Curvy Girl. And I really thought it was going to be more like Olivia Dade. I really thought it was going to be more like Dumplin, like that sort of, Rainbow Rowell, that kind of type of
Yeah.
book. It was not. So, Misadventures of a Curvy Girl, for those who don't know, is an earlier work of Sierra's. It is a sword crossing MMF novella. They are soldiers. Like, it's almost, there's parts of it that I'm like, I could see her workshopping Embry and Ash in these characters. Like, now that I've reread them both. And
Mhm.
so when you read a writer and you're like, okay, that was compelling as fuck. Then when you read a writer like that, you immediately want to just read their whole catalog, right? So
Yeah.
I just went into Amazon, and I went into Schmamazon because during COVID, that's where we were getting shit, right? Like, there
Yes.
was
Yeah.
no going to the bookstore to browse, and just looked at their catalog. And like, I'm a politics junkie. I work for government. I've been involved in campaigns. So it was like, president, vice president, first lady. Yes, please. And so I read American Queen in probably 5 hours. Like, it was one of those ones where you start and you just don't stop.
Oh
Like,
man.
and then I immediately ordered the next one. But of course, two
Yep.
days was too long. And that was when I started Kindle Unlimited as well. Because I was like, oh, there's an app. And that's when I can start buying books on
quick,
Kindle.
quick, quick,
And
quick.
so, and again, I was halfway through American Prince and I was ordering American King, and it had
Yes.
come. So I downloaded that one too. So this is one of the few series that I own in both digital and physical. And because I'm not a book
That's
buyer,
a lot.
right?
That's a lot for Hailey, y'all. Like, that's a big deal. If you haven't listened to our episode from September, like, you should do that immediately after this because it was great. Oh,
So speaking of our episode from September, I had mentioned to my husband that I did it, but I don't think he really clued in. And so when we were talking about doing another episode,
yeah.
I was like, well, I've done her podcast before. And he's like, what? So he immediately had to listen to the podcast. He is obsessed now. He has listened to every single one of your episodes.
Oh,
He
my
loves it.
goodness.
He's like, because his thing, like, he doesn't read romance. He's not even that, like, he reads books, but he's not a book goblin reader, book dragon like us. And he just loves podcasts of people who love things. And he's like, he loves to hear people's passion. And he's like, it's very clear that this comes from a really passionate place. So kudos to you. My, nearly 50-year-old ex-soldier husband loves your podcast.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. It's also nice to like meet people who also aren't my family who are like, I listen to it because normally if someone I know has listened to it, they're like, it's so weird. Like, I wish it weren't you. Like, I love it, but I wish it weren't you.
Well, I did a video on my Instagram a couple weeks ago that was like the very fucking. I forgot that my mom is following me on my Bookstagram, and she liked it, and I was like, Terry Hoyen, like, why of all the reels would you like that one? I don't think she did it on purpose, but we're not talking about it. I just pretend it didn't happen.
Oh man, the number of things that I'm like, didn't happen. It just didn't happen with my mother. It could be. Anyway, let's talk about the book. So
yes.
You found Sierra, and then you found this. So I heard about Sierra Simone, and I heard about Priest, and I tried reading Priest. And I say tried because I don't like to feel deep things. I don't like to cry. And so I started it and got to a certain point, and I was like, I think something bad is going to happen, and I feel too much for these characters to watch something bad happen to them. And I put it down, and I haven't picked it back up.
Oh, Priest is also devastating. Like, it has a beautifully happy ending, though.
It is a romance, I'm aware. And someone spoiled it enough for me that I probably one day we'll go back and finish it, but that day is not today, my friend. Also, I am not, there are some moments where I'm like, I don't know if I'm Catholic enough to, like, I don't understand or connect with Catholicism enough, which is, and she said it, she's a theological, like, smut writer. She said that in
Well,
interviews, which is very much,
it's
but like,
very
there's
apparent
also,
in this book as well.
it is. And there are moments where I'm like, I don't fully understand what you're talking about and don't connect to it on a certain level, but like that's my baggage and that's my own thing.
I have opinions that I think sometimes Catholicism borders almost on an ethno-religion because people are really born into it.
Yes.
It's a little different than other Christian faiths in that way
Mm-hmm.
because it has so much ritual and it starts like you're baptized as a very small infant. Like
Yes.
it's very ingrained in people. And even people who've like deconstructed and moved away from it, it's really hard to not have it as this presence in your life. So I
Yeah.
get it. And I think she probably worked out a lot of her own shit by writing these books.
Probably. But so I tried priest, and then I don't know if I've shared this story. So this is we're gonna have like tidbits of Jace's life. You're welcome. So there was this one night, this is my bad habit, my secret shame. My first relationship with audiobooks was I would listen to them to fall asleep. And so I would pick books that, and for two reasons. I wake up in the night and I get very anxious about it. And I would fear that I wasn't going to go back to sleep. And so if I was tuning back into an audiobook and then I woke up and I was in a different place, it like reassured me that I went back to sleep, even if I was waking up again. And so I listened to a lot of really fluffy audiobooks and don't remember them on the Audible Plus catalog. That was my jam. So a lot of really fluffy ones, but somehow American Queen came up and I was like, sure, why not? This doesn't seem too heavy. And that night I was awoken by one of the humans who I live with, and they got sick in the middle of the night. And they got sick in a place. They got sick in my bed. Like they came in to tell me that they weren't feeling well, and then they got sick in my bed on me. So I'm dealing with like a sick human, destroyed bed. And I've woken up, I'm like, you know what, let me just restart this episode, this thing. I kind of remember liking this book and I hadn't been able to go back to sleep. So I listened to the whole audiobook. This is like midnight, listened to it all the way until like 7 a.m. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? It like got me emotionally through that really shitty night. But I also was like, I don't know how much I remember about this audiobook because I'm also incredibly sleep deprived. I was, cleaning up my bed, like, vacuuming up my bed from illness. If you've ever had to do that, like, it was a terrible night.
More times than I care to admit.
Yeah. So, and I was like, I don't know if it was me or if it was that night, but I think this is a book that I have to read. And because I didn't finish the audiobook, I got to the wedding and then I was like, the day started. And then I was like, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly. I think I have to read the book. And so I read the book, American Queen, back in June. And
then I wouldn't leave you alone about it.
and it, like, I knew enough people who, when I said I was reading American Queen, told me like, oh my God, you're going to love it. It's going to devastate you. And like American Queen was devastating that I was too afraid to pick up the next two books. And I had ordered them. I had bought them. They were on my shelves and I was too afraid. So thank you. Do you want to share like high level what each, do you think it would be better to do like what the series is about and then break down each book, or break down this book one at a time?
Why don't I do it the way that we talk about policy, which we go town, province, country. So it's small, medium, big. So
sure.
Each book is the character's POV. There are other POVs in each book, but each of the triad, the thruple, I don't know, it's hard to define what they are, and I'm sure we'll get into that because it's not healthy. Like, let's agree, not healthy.
No.
But each book is sort of, so American Queen is Greer's story, who is sort of the Guinevere stand-in. American Prince is Embry's story, who is the Lancelot stand-in. And then American King is Ash's story. I will contend, though, that Ash doesn't have a ton of story. Like, it is still, I still feel like it's Greer and Embry's story, but we can talk about that later. Um, and so I have notes. I took notes. I did it like I would in school. Anyway,
I love that.
and then but the story overall is this story about three people who have had all these different kismet moments where they're all interconnected. Their love has been instant, and it is not instant lust. It is so much deeper than that. It's like they have this deep soul, sort of fated mates like connection. And that is the running theme throughout the entire book. And we are seeing the snippets of moments where fate is bringing them together. And that's why it has to be read in order. It has to be read. You don't want to read them too far apart either, I don't think. And it's timeline shifting and POV shifting, but it is the constant theme is the working of fate to bring three true lovers together for their ending. That's how I would describe it anyway.
I love it. Ugh. So I know we touched on it lately, but this is inspired, based heavily in the Arthurian legend, and not, spam on a lot, not necessarily the Keira Knightley movie, which she does mention in her author's note at the end of American King, but in a lot of that historical text. So if you are an Arthur nerd, you are going to love this. And if you're an Arthur nerd, you might miss some things, but I don't think you're going to miss out on the pathos of this story. So know that the connection, and if you read this and you're like, oh, this kind of feels like Arthur. It's King Arthur's story, and it touches upon some of the more uncomfortable parts of King Arthur's story that I think in modern times are often kind of, no, that totally didn't happen with someone we view as a great leader. And it does. I think it challenges you in a way, this story of what does it mean to be a good person, especially for Ash and for Greer and for Embry. Like, what does it mean to do the right thing, even when that right thing creates a result that you didn't want? And that's heartbreaking. Just so
And
much of this broke my
there is
fucking heart.
There's really a lot of themes of leadership too, which I find really interesting because she really has kind of amazingly used the Dom kink to explain Ash as a leader. And that's really, really interesting. Like, it's not just there for titillating sake. It really does explain him as a person, like, so deeply. I don't even know if I can fully explain it, but the more you read the scenes, you're like, oh, this is not about being excited. This is about seeing who Ash is, how he loves, because he leads the country in the same way. And it's really cool. It's really cool. Like, Sierra, the fact is like, if it wasn't romance, if she was just writing women's fiction or fiction, she'd be just the most famous mainstream writer ever. And that's what kills me about the way romance is perceived. Because there are some of these writers that are just like, they're masters at their craft.
They are. I don't think I've ever experienced a book that has made me so excited and like so hungry for what's to come next, but also so fearful for what's to come next, because I love these characters. And in such short a time, there are book series where you're like, oh, I've read like 7 books. What's gonna No, from almost the beginning, she hooks you. And the other thing that I really found fascinating about the politics of this is part of the plot is Ash and Embry are the first leaders from this new party in America. And if you are familiar with American politics, we very sadly have a primarily two-party system. Like technically no, but it's a two-party system. And they come in as these black horse candidates for this brand new party that is basically taken the middle of both Democrats and Republicans and made this new party together. However, Greer and her family and many of the other people involved in the story are Republicans. They're not Democrats. And I found
Greer
that
is a Democrat.
No, Luther was a Republican.
Was he?
Penley Luther was a Republican.
Like, isn't there that line where Morgan is kind of trying to rib her, and she's like, how will the Democratic Women's Caucus feel about you with marks on you like that from the president?
I thought
and she's
Penley
like,
Luther
I'm a member
was
of
a
Ash's
Republican.
party.
I'm
going to have to look back.
Oh, now we're going to have to look. Because I know...
because Embry is Embry comes from Republican royalty.
Embry and Morgan are Republicans, and I thought she was also a Republican. Because Imogen was a Republican. Like, Imogen worked for Penley Luther.
But did they say she was a Republican? You know what? I'm not, because I'm not American. I probably didn't pick up on it as closely. But
well, she just called it as a consultant to the party.
Yeah, they refer to it as.
I usually hear that as, hey, Seffi, can you look it up? Can you look up what Penley Luther's party was? But like Morgan and Embry both go to the Republican side, and that's so fascinating to me because normally, like, no, actually, complete offense to the Republican Party, but like most romance writers are writing in a more liberal frame of mind. And so when they have people, especially heroes, especially, you know, they're showing the examples of politics, it's usually to highlight democratic values, or like from the Democrat side in America as opposed, or the liberal side.
Yeah, I do think, when were these books written? Because it's like
27. I think 2017 was American.
Yeah, 2016 is American Queen. So it's right before things started to get real crazy in global politics.
What? I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? Is something happened in 2016?
I don't know what could possibly have happened. Everybody's also shitting their pants up here if it makes you feel any better.
I don't blame them.
Well,
I don't blame them.
You guys get a cold and we get influenza. We get typhoid. So it's just the nature of Canadian American interactions. Anyway, so I think what I found really interesting is she didn't go into a lot of like the different ideologies of the parties. She treated it as clans. So if you think about it in the Arthurian legend context, they were stand-ins for the clans.
That's so fucking cool. And no, I didn't think about it. I love that.
So she used a known word, but it's like Greer is from this clan. That's why I'm so almost certain that she's Republican, because how would she not, she's not Republican? Because she would have known Embry. She would have grown up in the same circle as him.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not important. Anyway,
you're making good points, and Michael, maybe cut this out or put it in or put it in part 2. Or save it for the Patreon. But so we have mentioned that these books, you have to read each book in order, but within the book itself, it does not necessarily follow a linear timeline. It goes back and forth between the primary timeline of now and the history. And what I think is so fascinating is that as each book happens, we get more layered nuance to events that we saw earlier in the book. And Sierra did a great job with choosing what timelines and pieces to put in what places to make it so fucking agonizing. I truly, y'all, I'm incredibly empathetic and I don't like to cry, which means I don't read books that make me feel things. And like, when
I have some bad news for you. You're a romance reader. That's not a thing. You have to
I don't like books that, I don't like books that are going to make me cry. And when I tell you that I truly like keened, like keening, heart-wrenching sobs at the end of American King. I am telling, like, from the depths of my soul. So, okay. Can we give an overview of the timeline of this story? Do you think that would help?
I think so.
Or, okay,
I think I don't know, to me, there's several key points in the book that are, I would
yes.
call them pivot points in the series. So, um, it's hard to know where to start with talking about those pivot points because we see Greer's position first, and she was a child when what first happened between Embry and Ash happened. So I'm going to start with them. So Embry and Ash are soldiers. They both have a normal college experience in that they didn't go to, I forget what your guys' is called. We call it Royal Military College here, but they didn't go to college in a military environment. They both had normal
Yes.
college experiences, and then there was a conflict going on, and it's quite funny because who would have known that there would be a conflict in the exact same region that is so heavy
Yeah,
on our thoughts and minds
right
right now.
now.
But so they did a thing that a lot of young men that we saw a lot of young men do after 9/11, which was they
Mm-hmm.
joined the military out of patriotism because they didn't know what to do next. It seemed like a good place to grow and become. So, and I think they did it for two different reasons. So Ash joins because he wants to be a fundamentally good man. He is orphaned from a young age. Shocking, it's the Arthurian legend, but he never knows his parents until much later in his life. And you can tell a lot of his raison d'etre is to make himself worthy of love and make himself worthy of not being abandoned and not being left behind. It seems much more noble than that, but it is definitely the core of much of what he does. And like, I'm sorry, we're all pretty simple beings, even people who become presidents.
We're human.
Yeah. And then Embry joins because he is a poor little rich boy, playboy, whose mother is an extremely powerful governor. His his father is something important in his stepfather is also something important in politics. He has no father. It's never mentioned. So I think there's talk to be had about that too, about Embry's origin stories, but because I think his way he interacts with Ash is a little bit of daddy issues. But that's neither here nor there. And maybe even mommy issues with Greer, if we're being totally honest. But so they both join the military and they meet each other in this place they call,
Carpathia.
no, Carpathia. It
Carpathia.
is an actual region. There is Carpathian Mountains, but they give it a pretend country, which God bless
Mm-hmm.
you, Sierra. It doesn't villainize any.
It wasn't. I don't think it was a country when it started because there were like the
No.
separatists. It
Yeah.
became a country in this conflict.
You could compare it to Caledonia or or Basque or
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, those sort of countries
Yeah.
with like ethno places within a region that are sort of the minority. Uyghurs, they exist in every country. These
Yes.
ones happen to be rebels. And so they go there, and it's on the guise of peacekeeping. I know way too much military history because I'm like, it's very comparable to the Bosnia conflict prior to, like, no, Hailey, just stop. Nobody cares. But so they go
Someone
there.
cares, but no, but like we want to know this too.
They they go there ostensibly for sort of a peacekeeping type of mission. It becomes obvious very quickly that it's going to go into full blown war. And there's a line in it that just, as somebody who has military service, is married to somebody who is a veteran, there's this line. It's like, it doesn't really feel any different when you're in the fighting. Like, it doesn't, like,
Mm-hmm.
whether they call it a war or a conflict or a mission, it doesn't
Yeah.
change how you feel about it. And I like, there's just some of these little throwaway lines that are so good. Anyway, so they're in war and they're immediately rivals to a certain extent because Ash takes everything way too fucking seriously. He has no chill. The guy he has no joy, he has no chill, he doesn't know how to laugh. He probably, eats his dinner in the way prescribed in the drill manual. Like, there's nothing there.
No,
And
nothing.
Embry is the complete fucking opposite. he takes nothing seriously enough. He's here for a good time, not a long time. He is the quintessential, like, he is Chuck Bass from Gossip Girl if Chuck Bass was not an
Oh,
asshole.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he's son of privilege, clearly brilliant, but does not know how to use that brilliance for good.
Yeah.
So, and they're in conflict together. And at some point in their first tour, Embry's stepsister comes to see the thing, and really, she's a bit of a I don't know, can we say whore in a loving way? She knows her stuff. She knows what she likes. She's there to meet some soldiers, and they all go to Prague
100%.
together. And her and Ash have an affair, a very romantic, powerful, sexual affair, very short lived. Where this is where Ash finally discovers his whole dom self. He's known it his whole life, but it's where the first time where somebody's been like, this isn't weird. Like, it's not something you have to shut down. And he is
Mm-hmm.
27 years old and a virgin at this point because he
He's
feels so
not.
disloyal in his
No,
sexual encounters.
he's not that young. He's not that old yet because he's 26 when he meets Greer. So he's like 24 or
24. You're right. Sorry.
23 or
He
24
has
because he
finished
finished
college
college.
as a virgin. He has finished college as a virgin because
Yes.
he is so hung up about doing things the right way that he will not
Mm-hmm.
even fantasize about kink while having sex with somebody who is what he describes as a vanilla partner. And I'm like, okay,
Yes.
this guy he is too fucking much. It's too much. So anyway, Morgan opens all this up. Can I say who she is? Can we talk
Not
about
yet.
it? Or
Not
is
yet.
it too
Not
early?
yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Too early.
So you tell about the next part. What would you say is the next part? I would
Okay.
say it's England.
So what I'm going to say is before that, after he and Morgan have that week, at the end of this tour, Embry and Ash have a moment. They share a kiss, they share a connection, and then Embry is gone. He finishes his tour, he leaves. And says nothing. And I think they are done together. Embry has left him.
They don't even write letters.
They don't even write letters. No, they there's like an email there's the email of like Patroclus. There's the one where they like name each other. It's like one email exchange. There is a side character of Merlin who kind of shows up as one does, and Merlin says, "Hey Ash, come with me to London." In London, he meets at this party 16-year-old Greer, who is there with her grandfather and her cousin Abilene, and Abilene is a full-blown bitch. Hate her so much.
She's a
So
sociopath.
much. She's a sociopath. She's rude. She's horrible. Anyway. And Ash has escaped the party. He's standing on a balcony and he hears turns out to be Greer and Abilene fight, glass breaks, and silence. And he turns, and what does he see but this stunningly beautiful girl kneeling in glass, bleeding. And it opens up everything in his little Dom's heart. And he has the same kind of like world shifting moment that he had when he met Embry, when he meets Greer. And they share a connection and they talk. And he like, okay, this is going to sound really, really gross, but I promise you it's so sexy and beautiful. He like licks the blood off her cut fingers because she's been picking up the glass that Abilene broke, and he like sees the submissive girl in front of him and he kisses her, but understands that he's 26 and she's 16 and this is wrong. And so
he even says, "Tell me you're 18." Like, he knows. He instinctually knows.
He knows. And they share one kiss and then they separate. And Greer finds his email address, or gets his email address because she's connected to this political family, and starts to email him at 16, 17.
And they are dirty emails.
They are dirty. They are filthy. They are expressing all of the submissive wants and needs that she has, that he awoke in her. Like, I want to crawl to you. It's so so real. Like if you've ever experienced, number one, like the hunger of a 16-year-old for just your sexual awakening is so
Oh my
real in
God,
those
yes.
emails, like 16, 17. And that was her first kiss. Like that was her first kiss, her first sexual awakening. And those feelings are so big. And so if you've ever been 16 or 17, you feel that. You're like, oh God, that is how it felt. And then if you've ever, I think even if you haven't experienced or want kink, that the first time you can truly express at your true sexual feelings, and for her it's kink and it's submission and it's with this person, there's just something freeing about it. And Ash never responds, and she sends one
Never.
last email the eve of her 18th birthday to him. She's like tipsy, and it is heartbreaking and beautiful. And what we learn later is, while he was in love with Embry and is in love with Embry, Embry had rejected him, and he lets his heart like love this 16-year-old from afar because he's a good man and he's like too fucking noble, too fucking noble. And he prints her emails and he reads her emails and he loves her without ever reaching out because he knows it's wrong. And I will give him fucking credit, because there are a lot of
Yeah.
assholes who would be like, did you just turn 18? And he does not.
No, he doesn't. He assumes that she is having another life. And part of it is because she's so pure. And there's so much imagery of her purity too, right? Because she's so blonde and she's so pale and she's like liquid moonlight. Normally I hate that shit, but in this context it mattered.
Yes.
And so I think her purity like him protecting her purity is something about his nobleness as well. Like it's all tied up in how he feels about being a good man.
Both of
And
them
anyway, so
protect her
then,
in different ways. Both of
oh,
them are
100%,
determined to protect her
100%.
in very different ways. So let's go back to Embry and Ash, because Embry comes, so once it becomes an actual conflict, Embry goes back. Embry goes
Yes,
back to war, and now Ash is his captain. Do you want to take over?
yes.
Okay.
Sure, yes. So I'm going to make mistakes with the details, so please correct me. I do not mind. But there's, it starts being like little stolen glances or moments. And there's these little, it had happened in their first tour together, but it happens more and more where it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely becoming a lot spicier.
Well, because they'd kissed at
And
the right before Embry left, they'd kissed, and now when
mhm.
they're back, there's the kissing of the boot, like kiss my boot. Oh, I know. Like I'm
and
anyway.
and yeah, there's so many things, but the big, so the conflict is getting worse and worse.
Uh-huh.
There's just more and more things are happening, um, and we really don't know all about the everything that happened until almost the third book with their
Yeah.
sexual awakening during that time.
Yes.
Because there's one line in the third book that made me fully cackle, where Embry said, "And the shame of going to the quartermaster yet another time to ask for a patch kit for my uniform's knees." I was like, holy shit, that is so funny. That is so fucking funny. Because it's like everybody knows. Like, let me tell you, it's close quarters in any type of military setting, and everybody knows. It's the definition of don't ask, don't tell. So I'm like, the fact that it stayed a secret has always been was mind boggling to me. But anyway, so there is a massive battle, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge battle. They almost lose their entire platoon. A couple of key characters are killed, um, and Embry is wounded. Embry is very badly wounded, and they are separated from both communications and their platoon, which is a very dangerous place to be. So they are in the woods together, and they are keyed up from this battle. And this is the first time that they have actual penetrative sex. And Embry is
Yes.
bleeding from a gunshot wound. They use the Vaseline from the first aid kit. There's
He's on
morphine. Like it is,
morphine.
like it should not be as sexy as it is, and it's incredibly sexy. It is just, and I think because their romance was so under the surface, like it was just bubbling, bubbling, bubbling. I love that it blew up in such a flashpoint, because it was so
Yes.
perfect for that. Like it, in a hotel in Prague would have been boring as shit, but that was like perfect. So then
Unbelievable.
Embry has to go home, because he's injured. He has to do rehab. He has to do all kinds of things. And then um, when they're back together again, Ash proposes. to Embry. And
After
but I've
several years, I think it's
yes,
after a couple of years together. So Embry comes back and he's
yes.
like ready to like fully be with him, but he meets Merlin. And I think I forgot to tell this, but Merlin met Greer the same night she met Ash. And Merlin said, and his name is
No,
literally
he met her
fucking
younger.
Merlin. Oh,
It
oh,
was when she was a
younger.
child,
When she was a child,
because
and he
he
was
says,
like,
"Keep your
save
kisses
your
for yourself." She
kisses.
was like
Keep
6.
your,
Yeah, save your kisses
oh
for
God, that's
yourself.
so creepy. So creepy, but like real. And so save your kisses for yourself. And then on this train back to Ash, he sits next to Embry and goes, and basically says, like, you can't be with him if you want him to be the leader that like he can be. Like being with you will hurt his career because and you can't be together. And so
Yeah,
Embry
America is
internalizes
not ready
that.
for a bisexual president, friends.
Well, I think also at that time, like Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still either like a thing or just newly repealed, and like it was still so sensitive. It still is sadly very sensitive, but
Yeah.
um, but so he goes back and they have essentially a secret relationship, and Ash proposes and Embry says no, and it's oh my God, like, and we knew that. It just. And I almost feel bad for those of you who are listening to this, because the way that these little details of their lives are revealed in the books is like expert level, like it's like fucking magic. Like, what do you think is going to be under my handkerchief? And then the reveal is like not what you think at all. I mean, I remember this moment, and I'm going to ruin something, but in American Queen, where Greer's so mad at Ash. Like, she's found out that he and Embry had a past, and she's like, you hid Embry. Like, you only want him when you're not with women, and he's your dirty little secret. And you've been watching this from Greer's point of view, and you're like, yeah, that's terrible. Poor Embry. Oh my gosh. And Ash goes, I proposed to him twice, and he rejected me
Yes.
twice. And you're like, what? And then, their actual history of like lovers and partners and stuff. It's so heartbreaking. Okay, so anyway, so after the first proposal, they separate. Merlin introduces Ash to this woman, Jenny, who is like nice and cute and vanilla. And they get married, and he runs for election, and then his wife gets cancer and dies during the election process, like during the campaign.
Yes.
And he is elected. He and Embry start hooking up again. That's when the second proposal happens. Embry says no.
Well, and
And then
Embry is
he
his
sees,
running mate during
and
Jenny's death
yes,
as well.
Embry is his running mate. And Embry, and he see Greer, and he's like, Embry, I need you to go get Greer for me. That's the girl from the letters. I need her. And then that's when I'm gonna like pause.
Special.
I know. No, I missed it on purpose.
Okay.
So then so he's like, oh, Embry, go get her. I need to talk to her. I can't believe she's here. Embry goes to get Greer, and we find out, because it's not the second time he's ever seen her, it's the third. The second time he's ever seen Greer, the second time Ash has ever seen Greer was the day he proposed, after he proposed to Jenny. Like, he proposed to Jenny in the morning, and then he saw Greer at this event that afternoon, and he like had a moment with her and like held her hair and kissed her. And yeah, she's technically legal now and he's older, but like he just fucking proposed to Jenny. And Greer, devastated, like leaves that event crying, runs into Embry, and they share this incredible afternoon and evening together, both in love with Ash, both hurting from Ash's engagement to Jenny. And Greer loses her virginity to Embry that day. And Embry's like, I fell in love with her that day and didn't know who she was. And the next day was going to be like, Ash, I met this angel. And then Ash tells him about Greer and what her name is. And Embry realizes, shit, my angel is your letter girl and I can't have her. And so like ghosts Greer. So for Greer in that moment, like Embry and Ash, the only two people she's ever kissed in her life, keep her kisses to herself, show up together. And like that's when the now part of the story, and it's just fucking devastating. It's just fucking devastating. Like I feel like devastated is the best way that I can describe myself while reading this series.
100%. And I have to talk about Embry because I'm in love with him. Like he's my forever boyfriend, my forever book boyfriend. But his transition through the book at that phase, he is still putting Ash first. Like every decision he makes with Ash is about putting Ash above himself because Embry legitimately thinks he does not deserve good things. He deeply believes that he is a bad person, that he is a selfish bad person. But the thing is that every opportunity he is allowed to show his true character, he is the best person. He is just a broken-hearted boy.
Yeah.
He needed more mom. He needed his mommy more. Yes, mommy
There's
issues,
so
daddy
many
issues. No, it's just
so many issues. And it's this evolution. The story as it goes on in the now is this evolution of like, how do these three humans love each other? How do they love each other just as the three of them? How do they love each other in the political situation they're in with Ash and Embry being the president and the vice president? How do they love each other? Just how can they make these commitments to each other and not break each other's hearts?
I was looking for something specific that bugged the shit out of me and I can't remember where it is now. Oh, I remember what it is now, but
yes, tell me.
It is, I really feel like until the point where Ash resigns the vice presidency, where Embry resigns the vice presidency, that Ash is the sun and Embry and Greer are planets in his orbit. And that is how they all interact. There's no equality in it at all at that point. Because like, and for all his nobility, Ash is allowed to fuck both of them without talking to the other, to do whatever he wants with either one, regardless of how it harms them, which is a bit odd. Like he, kissing under the mistletoe and whatever. And then the first time there's an opportunity for Greer and Embry to be together without Ash, they are both torn up about it. Like they are only doing it because Ash is granting permission.
I think that one of the
I don't know enough about poly relationships to say whether that's good or bad. It struck me. I didn't think it was very good, but I'm also not polyamorous. So
yeah, one of the things that very much surprised me, and I'm still reckoning with it, is the amount of jealousy permitted within these relationships. Like they are all jealous of each other, of the other's relationship. So Ash has a lot of jealousy with Greer and Embry, and like how they relate to each other and how they can give each other stuff that he can't give them. And Greer is jealous of the history that Ash and Embry have and what they like. All of them are jealous, and they express this feeling of jealousy, but they don't talk about any ways to mitigate it or reassure the others. It just kind of, oh, I'm jealous. And I think that for me, not that jealousy doesn't have a place in polyamory, because jealousy is a human emotion and it happens. But even in a monogamous relationship, if you are someone who is easily jealous, you talk to your partner about things that would make you jealous, and you talk about whether or not those things are acceptable in your relationship. And you don't just let those feelings fester. It just made me, a lot of this feels so unhealthy in so many ways to me. Do you get that? Like, just unhealthy.
Oh, 100%. There's so many times when I'm like, I have little notes where I'm like, yikes. Ooh, like triad is not working here. Like I just, because it does seem odd. Like, and it's like, there's one line where Ash is like, oh, they're talking about the triad, and Ash is like, you don't know how much I've, no matter what happens tonight, I want you to know that I will never regret marrying. If I had to choose, it would be you every time. What? Like, that's so fucked up. Like,
It's
I
so
thought Embry
fucked.
was the love of your life as well. Like, so
It's
you're
so fucked
saying,
where
I'm
he's
so
like,
glad
my
Embry broke my
wife.
heart.
Yeah, he also like does a lot of my wife. Are you gonna fuck my wife? I'm like, didn't you all make vows in your poly? It's very odd to me. So if so in terms of like, is this a great example of polyamory? I don't love it. I don't love it. Um, I think that there are definitely better examples out there of a healthy poly relationship. And I'm not saying they don't get there in the end, eventually ish, but primarily what we see in these books is not what I would call a good example of communicating with one's partner.
No. 100% no. And I think it's because it's kind of trying to align more with that Arthurian legend, where
Yeah.
it was much more of a triangle. It was not healthy at all. It was infidelity of
No.
the queen. So I think
Yep.
she's pulling that theme more than she is pulling healthy poly themes. I don't think that was ever the point of this book, and I think she would be the first one to say it.
Yeah. I would
There's
agree.
like
Like,
there
I don't think she ever writes a book where she's like, you know what? I'm just going to make everything happy and healthy and great for everyone involved.
no.
um,
But yeah, like Embry says here, this is fucked up, and then Embry frowns, and I don't want to be the third wheel in your marriage, a guest who gets kicked out when he wears out his welcome. And
mhm.
then Greer says, you're not and you won't be. He 100% is and does. It 100% happens. Like, and it's
Yes and no. I'm gonna
fair,
go with
fair.
like that in that instance of like kicking. If that's after the actual wedding night, like then
That's
he
during the
doesn't
wedding
get
night.
kicked out of. Yeah, that he doesn't get kicked out. He leaves for various reasons. But what
Yeah.
infuriated me in American Queen is they have this moment and they talk about once Greer and Ash are engaged, they have this moment and they talk about Embry and they're both like, we love him, we miss him, and we want to talk about the fact that we want him in our relationship. And they just don't fucking find the time to talk to him or
He is the
reassure
president of
him.
the United States. Like, maybe he is busy. I don't know. Like, he's the president. Maybe got
But they
called into
see
the
him
situation
all the
room.
time. They see him all the time and they're just like, you know what? We can't talk about this. So we're just going to let him feel like he's unloved. And this is how the book fucking starts. Like the book starts. So we know this happens when American Queen, it starts. It's the three of us, Ash, stern and powerful, Embry, haunted and pale, and me, with bite marks on the inside of my thighs and a hammering heart. It's when I'm almost to the front that I see the best man has a bite mark of his own peeping above the collar of his tuxedo, large and red and fresh. Oh my gosh. And like, oh, it's almost when I'm to the front that I see the small white square in Ash's tuxedo pocket isn't a silk handkerchief. It's undeniably the familiar lace of my panties. No one who hasn't seen my panties before would know, but he's so blatantly displaying them like a trophy. The last time I saw them, they were clutched in Embry's strong fist. And then skipping. Embry's hand unconsciously goes up to the touch, the bite mark, I'm certain, Ash left on his neck. So like we start this book
We
at
know.
their wedding. We know that there's some shit going down and like some like kinky fuckery. Kinky fuckery going on, and it just like it just fucking breaks my heart how much they love each other and how little they communicate it. And I'm going to pivot right now and say, I think for them, the three of them, truly, they don't know how to express their love except when fucking. And so kink in this book is an essential part of the communication between the three of them because it's truly how they connect and they give time, energy, and like the love that they have for each other with their whole heart. Well, that's it for part one. I did warn you. I did warn you that this would be a part one, a part two. If you want to know when we talk about the spice, it's in part two. So come back next week where we talk about the spice, where we talk about the conclusion, and where we share what books you should read for the book hangover that you're going to have after reading this trilogy. Thanks, y'all. That's it for today, y'all. This has been a Three Paws Productions podcast. Our producer is Seffi. Michael Achenbach is our patient editor. Our theme song is written and performed by Diana Weishauer. You can find show notes and so much more at jacereadsromance.com. That's JAYCE Reads Romance. Follow along on TikTok and Instagram at Jace Reads Romance. If you'd like to ask a question or share a story for the podcast, call and leave a message at 661-JACE-RR. That's 661-529-2377. Or send an email to jace@jacereadsromance.com. Finally, like and subscribe so you can get every episode when they drop. You can also leave us a review to help others find us. And remember, this is Jace holding space for you.